The gavel hits, hard enough to make the room flinch. "Life," the judge says, then smirks, like justice is a joke only he gets. 17-year-old Malik Carter stands up, straight-backed, calm, and dangerous in the way truth always is. The judge leans in. "Where's your father, boy?" Malik's voice doesn't shake. "May I call him, Your Honor?" One call, one voice. And on the other end of that line, the United States Attorney General picks up. That's how it starts. A courthouse, a broken system, and a kid whose science project was never just about air, it was about who gets to breathe and who doesn't. When the gavel fell, everyone thought the moment would end there. Just another courtroom, another young black kid put in his place. But they were wrong, because what started as a humiliation would turn into a reckoning. Before the day was over, that same courtroom would shake under a truth no one saw coming, the kind that doesn't need permission, only proof. The sound of the gavel cracked like a gunshot inside courtroom 4B. "Life," Judge Barrett Sloan said, his voice calm, almost casual. Then he looked down from the bench. "You're just another black boy with no future." The words didn't echo. They hung, thick as humidity. For a second, even the old clock on the back wall seemed to stop ticking. Malik Carter stood slowly, 17 years old, too young to look this steady, too old to keep swallowing moments like this. His shoulders squared, his chin lifted just a little, like he was measuring the distance between what was said and what was true. Sloan leaned forward, robe spilling over his desk like dark water. "I know your kind. No discipline, no direction, no father figure to keep you in line." He said it for the gallery, not for Malik. He wanted a reaction. Malik kept his eyes locked on him. "May I call him, Your Honor?" A ripple moved through the courtroom. Sloan raised a brow, smirking. "If he even answers." Malik took his phone from his jacket pocket. The bailiff stepped forward, uncertain, but Sloan waved him off. Malik pressed a contact and lifted the phone to his ear. "Dad," he said evenly, voice steady as steel wire. "Judge Sloan says you failed to raise me right. He's wondering where you are." He paused, letting the line catch. "Could you come to courtroom 4B? The spectators exchanged quick looks. Sloan blinked, half amusement, half irritation. But Malik didn't flinch. He put the phone down, calm, almost clinical. He'd learned from his father that silence, used correctly, was the sharpest tool in a courtroom. Earlier that morning, the metal detector had screamed. Officer Trent Briggs stepped forward, one hand hovering near his belt. "What's that contraption?" Malik smiled, the polite kind of smile that never helped. "It's an air quality monitor, sir, my science project. I'm scheduled to present to the Environmental Committee today." Briggs grabbed it without asking, turning the device over roughly. "Looks suspicious to me." "It measures particulate matter, PM 2.5 and 10. "Hands where I can see 'em," Briggs barked. The echo drew heads from every direction, lawyers, clerks, defendants. Malik froze, palms open. Judge Sloan had been walking by then, coffee in hand. He stopped just long enough to watch, to assess. "What's going on?" "Suspicious electronic device," Briggs replied. Sloan's gaze slid over Malik's jeans, his plain hoodie, the taped-up edges of the monitor. "Why aren't you in school, boy?" "I have an excused absence," Malik answered. "I'm presenting findings on air pollution in low-income neighborhoods." Sloan's mouth curved, a smile that wasn't. "In my courthouse?" "Yes, sir, room 302, 11 a.m. "We'll see about that. Bring him to my courtroom first." 15 minutes later, Malik stood in front of an empty gallery while his project lay disassembled on a table. Wires and sensors looked like bones picked clean. Sloan scrolled through his phone. "Explain again what this does." "It measures air quality, specifically particulate matter and pollutants." Malik's voice stayed measured. I've been collecting data in neighborhoods where asthma rates are 3 times the city average. Sloan flicked through a few papers, didn't read a word. And why bring this to my courthouse? The Environmental Committee meets here monthly, Malik said. Dr. Elena Morales invited me. Dr. Morales? Sloan frowned. Never heard of her. She's with the Department of Environmental Science at Wayne State. Sloan tapped his gavel lightly, a habit that sounded like an idle threat. Security will hold the device until I determine it's not dangerous. May I have a receipt, Your Honor? Getting legal advice from somewhere, are we? Sloan sneered. You can wait outside. He gestured to Briggs. Make sure our young scientist here learns how this building works. The hallway outside felt colder, brighter. Malik sat on a bench watching people stream in, attorneys with briefcases, defendants with nerves, clerks with coffee. Across the lobby, a white student carried a robotics kit twice the size of Malik's monitor straight through security. No one stopped him. No alarms, no questions. Malik's phone buzzed. Dad, everything on schedule? He typed back, just extra checks, nothing serious. Then deleted the message halfway and rewrote it shorter. His father didn't need to worry, not yet. Judge Sloan's voice carried down the hall. These people always have excuses. Teach him about authority. Malik's stomach turned at the phrasing. He'd heard it before. Different words, same tone, at airports, malls, classrooms. By the time Dr. Morales appeared, the meeting had already started. She was small, quick-moving, gray streaks in her hair like lightning lines. There you are, she said, breathless. Why aren't you setting up? Judge Sloan confiscated my project, Malik said quietly. Said it was suspicious. Her eyebrows shot up. Suspicious? It's an air monitor, not a bomb. Tell him that, Malik murmured. They went together to Sloan's courtroom. The judge didn't look up from his phone when they entered. Morales started gently. Your Honor, there's been a misunderstanding. Malik Carter is our invited presenter. This young man brought unauthorized electronic equipment into a federal building, Sloan said without glancing up. That's a security concern. It's a science project, Morales countered, voice clipped. I personally vetted it. Did you run background checks on him and his family? Sloan asked. Dr. Morales froze. Malik could feel the heat rise up his neck. He's one of our brightest students, she said. Sloan stood, straightening to his full height. Then he can present without his device. Consider it a lesson in preparation. Malik's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Room 302, the Environmental Committee. 12 members, laptops open, pens tapping. Malik stood at the front with nothing but a borrowed legal pad and memory. My project, he began, measures particulate matter across different Detroit neighborhoods. His voice cracked once, then steadied. Over 6 months, I recorded pollution levels nearly 3 times higher in low-income majority black communities. He drew a quick sketch on the pad. Arrows, dots, uneven circles. Spikes here matched emergency room visits for asthma within 48 hours. He spoke for 20 minutes, reconstructing every table, every chart. When he finished, there was silence, then applause. Remarkable work, said Dr. Priya Lawson, the chairwoman, especially under these circumstances. Where's your project now? Another member asked. Malik hesitated. Held by Judge Sloan for security reasons. The committee exchanged looks. Dr. Lawson frowned. That's unusual. We'll look into it. Afterward, Dr. Morales squeezed his shoulder. You handled yourself with grace. I'll talk to administration. Don't lose your cool. Malik smiled faintly. I'm way past cool. Back in courtroom 4B, the afternoon docket was thinning out. Sloan leaned back as Malik approached. Still here, Mr. Carter? Yes, sir. I've completed my presentation. I'd like to collect my project. That won't be possible today, Sloan said. Security needs to complete inspection. Could be days, could be weeks. Malik nodded once. Understood. He walked out quietly, every step deliberate, every breath measured like data points on a chart. Outside, he dialed his uncle. "Uncle James, I need advice. Federal property confiscation, no written cause, potential destruction of data." "Start documenting," James said. "Names times every word, and don't confront him alone." When Malik hung up, the text came through, unknown number. "Your project marked for disposal at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Sorry, friend at courthouse." Malik's thumb hovered over the screen. The streetlights flickered on outside the courthouse glass. His reflection looked older than 17. He whispered, "They're not just trying to stop a project. They're trying to erase the proof." And for the first time that day, his steady composure cracked. Not from fear, but from the electric certainty that tomorrow morning he would not back down. The text sat on his screen like a countdown he could hear. "Your project marked for disposal at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Sorry, friend at courthouse." He took a screenshot, emailed it to himself, then copied the number into a note he titled Chain of Custody. He added timestamps, names, what was said, what wasn't. The quiet lines you have to read twice to see what they mean. He didn't sleep much. He didn't want to risk it. While the house exhaled, old vents ticking, the refrigerator cycling, he spread his paperwork across the kitchen table under the light they'd had since he was 10. Taped shade, warm and yellow, like a late afternoon stuck on loop. Grant letter, receipts, committee invitation, printed and reprinted. He labeled each sheet with a sticky tab. Blue for purchases, green for approvals, yellow for emails. The printer spit out one more page. He slipped it into the top of the stack and wrote in block letters, "Property ownership and research purpose, notarized." A car passed outside, bass thumping faint through double glass. Somewhere a dog barked. Malik pulled the little blue microdrive from the zip pocket where he normally kept it. Then remembered it wasn't there, and the sudden nothing in his fingers burned worse than any cut. He tucked the note about the drive into the front of the folder anyway, as if the act of filing it would call it back into his hand. At 6:10 a.m., the kettle whistled. His mother, hair wrapped in a satin scarf, stepped into the kitchen and read the scene like a nurse reads vitals. "You're going early." "Before they open," he said. She looked at the clock, then at his face. "I can take the morning off. Come with you." He shook his head. "I'll be okay." He put on his jacket, slid the stack into a cheap plastic sleeve that didn't look like much until the light hit it just right, and the edges glowed like a badge. She leaned against the doorway. "Remember what your uncle said. Names, times. You have the right to ask for a receipt. You have the right to ask for the person in charge. You have the right to be treated like a human being." He swallowed. "Yes, ma'am." "Don't let that judge rent space in your head," she added, voice softening. "He's not the landlord of your worth." He smiled despite himself. "I won't." He kissed her cheek. She smelled like coffee and cocoa butter and the first day of school. The morning air bit his ears as he stepped outside. Detroit was the particular kind of blue it turns before the sun clears the factory roofs. River chill layered with exhaust from trucks already groaning down I-75. The courthouse rose gray and sullen as usual, a block of federal certainty plunked down in a city that knew better. A sanitation truck clanged down the side street. Birds skipped in the bare branches, arguing. He reached the steps at 7:12. Doors locked. Security empty behind the glass, lights on but no movement. He sat, set the folder on his lap, and started a new page. 7:12 a.m. Arrived steps, doors locked. Weather 35 degrees. No security present. Project marked for disposal at 9 a.m. Per text, 10:43 p.m. yesterday. A maintenance worker pushed a mop bucket inside the lobby, saw him, gave a quick nod that said, "Morning, I see you." At 7:29, a uniformed guard unlocked the side entrance and pulled a line of stanchions into place. At 7:43, the first lawyer in an expensive coat hurried up the steps, phone at his ear, and gave Malik a once-over like he was a piece of art he didn't understand. At 7:55, a woman in a skirt suit and sensible shoes walked past, blouse still carrying the steam of an iron. She checked a watch and frowned like she was mad at time itself. At 8:02, Judge Barrett Sloan climbed the steps with a travel mug in one hand and superiority in the other. Time 500. He stopped mid-step when he saw Malik. Surprise flared and gone. The face he wore to breakfast snapped back on. Persistent, Sloan said, a trait that reads differently on different bodies. Good morning, Your Honor, Malik said, standing. He held out the clear sleeve. Documentation of ownership and purpose of the project. Confirmation of my presentation yesterday. I'm requesting immediate return of my property and preservation of all data. Sloan didn't take the folder. File it with the clerk. There isn't time. I have reason to believe the project is scheduled for disposal at 9. Not my department, Sloan said. And that's when Malik realized some people don't use words to communicate. They use them to erase. Respectfully, Malik replied, this started under your authority. If my property is destroyed without due process, I'll escalate. Sloan's mouth twitched. He stepped closer, close enough that Malik smelled dark roast and something sweet, like he put a little syrup in his coffee when he wanted to feel kind. You have no power here, Sloan said softly, almost friendly, like he was giving a tour. This is a courthouse. Power lives up there. He tilted his head toward the bench behind stone and glass. Not on the steps. Malik didn't step back. The courthouse belongs to the people. Cute, Sloan said, smile tightening. He glanced at the folder, then at Malik's hands. Those look like falsified documents. They're notarized, Malik said, lifting the stamp into the morning light. Officer Trent Briggs appeared at the door, keys jangling like a nervous habit. Confiscate these and make a copy for the file, Sloan said. Briggs reached out, then hesitated, eyes flicking in a quick human way. Before he could move, an older woman with a badge and a stack of forms cracked the door. Judge Sloan, she said. There's a call for you. They said it's urgent. Irritation. From? They didn't say. Fine. He pointed at the folder. Stay where you are, he told Briggs, like he could pin them both with language, then vanished inside. The second he disappeared, Briggs let out a breath he'd been holding. Kid, he said without looking Malik in the eye, go home. This is home, Malik said, and surprised himself by meaning it. The automatic doors shushed and sighed as early traffic began. Belts off, shoes in bins, small trays for coins and keys like offerings at a metal temple. Malik waited. He wrote the time. He wrote the exact words. He wrote the length of the pause before each answer. By 8:30, the lobby was noisy. He moved to a bench outside 4B, floor gleaming from fresh buffing, the air faintly lemons and bureaucracy. You've been here all morning? The voice was steady, unhurried. A woman in a charcoal suit, hair clipped back, legal pad under her arm. Yes, he said. She sat like it was the natural next step. Nora Park, public defender. What are we doing? Waiting for a judge to not destroy my science project, he said, and almost laughed at the strangeness of it. Nora didn't smile. Tell me everything. He did. Not the emotions. Those can lie. He told her times, names, comments about father figures, the lack of a receipt, the planned disposal. Screenshots, emails, printed invite, the stamped envelope from the grant that still smelled like toner. Her pen moved fast, small, precise letters that looked like they could hold in court even without her standing next to them. We need to see the chain of custody, she said, and the processing level. That's downstairs. I know, come on. The elevator hummed like it had secrets. Down 2 levels, marble became painted cinder block. Portraits became pipes. The air changed. Cooler, damp, like it had touched something it didn't want to talk about. A steel door, wired glass. On the table, splayed like a crime scene diagram, lay Bluebird. Boards separated, wires coiled like veins. The small blue micro drive shining like a misplaced sky. "That's it," he said, throat tight. "That's please. That's it right there." A processing officer opened the door just wide enough to make his body a hinge. "Authorized personnel only." Nora showed her badge, then her legal pad like a second badge. "Public defender. We're seeking to preserve evidence and prevent the destruction of legally owned property." "Orders are orders. No access." "Who signed the disposal order?" "Judge Sloan." "On what grounds?" "Security risk." "Based on what evaluation?" He blinked. "Security risk," he repeated. Doctrine for a thought he didn't have. "We'll be filing an emergency stay," Nora said evenly. "Hold the item. Do not proceed with disposal. Until someone tells me different." The door sealed with a sound that felt personal. The elevator dinged like a laugh. Judge Sloan stepped out, travel mug, uninterested face. "Ms. Park, slumming with the troublemakers today?" "Good morning, Your Honor. Mr. Carter's property is being moved for disposal. We're requesting a stay." "Save your paperwork, my courtroom, my decision." He tilted his head toward the window. "Please escort them out. Mr. Carter is banned from this building." Malik stepped forward so his voice would carry. "Your Honor, I've been respectful and complied with every instruction. Why are you doing this?" Sloan's eyes stayed cold. "Because I can. Some people need to learn their place in the system." A hand on Malik's forearm. "Nora, don't engage. We'll find another way." Noon heat lifted the chill off the steps. Nora dialed. Judge Chambers, clerk's office, emergency line. "No one's available. Most won't cross Sloan." Malik paced the concrete, doing math that didn't need numbers. He called his uncle, voicemail. He called his father. "Hey, son." He didn't realize how good that voice would feel until it hit his ear. Calm, weighted, like a door frame you could lean on. "They're destroying my project. He banned me. I saw a hammer." "Where are you?" "Outside, with a public defender, Ms. Park." "Put me on speaker." "This is Daniel Carter," his father said. He didn't announce his title. He didn't have to. The power was in the way he didn't reach for it. "Nora, your son's project is scheduled for disposal. We tried Chambers, clerk, emergency line." "I understand," Daniel said. The city seemed to slow, like traffic hitting a yellow. "Ms. Park, escort Malik back inside. If security resists, ask them to call this number." He recited digits that sounded less like an extension and more like a back door. At the security desk, the guard found his authority and put it on like a hat. "Mr. Carter is banned." "Nora, we need to see Judge Sloan now. If you refuse, please call this number." The guard paled, dialed. "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir." He hung up, posture rearranged. "You may proceed to Chambers." The hallway to Chambers didn't want to look like a hallway. Thicker carpet, heavier frames. Inside, leather and old coffee. Books in neat ranks that said, "We love the law as an idea." On the desk, Bluebird. No hammer in sight, only the heat shimmer it left behind. "This is harassment," Sloan said. "I've decided. It will be disposed of according to..." Nora raised her phone. "We have instructions to call this number if you refuse to return Mr. Carter's property." Sloan laughed without humor. "Some bureaucratic underling doesn't concern me." Malik's voice came out smoother than he expected. "Then you should call." Something in the way he said it made Sloan stop. He dialed. Annoyance, then confusion, then a blanching Malik had only seen on TV when someone realized the camera was live. "This is Judge Barrett Sloan. Who am I speaking with?" "Yes, Yes, sir." "Understood. Yes, sir." He hung up, hands no longer fully piloted. Your property will be returned immediately, Mr. Carter. In its original condition, Malik said, with all data intact. Sloan nodded, eyes hunting for a place to land. Malik's phone buzzed. Is it resolved, Bob? His father asked. Yes, he's returning it. Good. Now, would you put Judge Sloan on the line? I'll be in the building tomorrow morning and would like to meet with him personally. This is Judge Sloan. Judge, this is Daniel Carter. Silence that held everything. The vents hum, a distant copier, the sound of authority that doesn't name itself. Attorney General Carter, Sloan said finally, voice hollow. Yes, sir. I'll clear my docket, 9 a.m. In the outer office, the clerk returned carrying Bluebird like a newborn, drive-seated, screws tossed in a plastic cup like jewelry at day's end. Malik exhaled, long, shaking slightly at the tail. The lobby met them like kitchen heat, voices, footsteps, a baby's impatient wail. A reporter with a camera bag looked up, registered Malik's face with a quick, clean, I see you. Nora. Not yet. Let's hold our story until our evidence is safe. On the steps, a ping. Jalen Brooks. Elena gave me your number, EPA Junior. If you've got raw data on those spikes, I can help visualize. Might be a city-wide pattern. Time 500 mentimes. Malik. Yes, after I mirror the drive. Meet tomorrow? Name the place, Jalen sent. We'll bring waffles. Malik smiled. The good kind of nerd. You feel that? Nora asked, eyes on the skyline. What? The weather just changed. She didn't mean temperature. She meant the rhythm, the way a rumor moves faster than a fire code patrol. The courthouse didn't look different. It felt different, like it was paying attention. By late afternoon, news vans nested along the curb, mass rising like silver reeds. Inside, 2 floors up, Judge Sloan walked tight circles, phone to his ear, muttering to someone who had promised him protection. You said I'd be covered, unassailable. Do you remember that? Because I do. The answer didn't land. The receiver slammed, lifted, dialed again. A clerk in the doorway, unsure of gravity. Sir, she said, there are FBI agents in the lobby. Downstairs, Malik sat on cold stone, backpack beside him, Bluebird cradled, microdrive mirrored onto a second drive Nora had shoved into his hand. He closed his eyes and let the hum of the city fill his edges. Mrs. Robinson's street where dust settled thicker, the school nurse with a drawer of inhalers and a heart full of names, the way Sloan had said, because I can, and the answer that's always the same, because we will. His phone buzzed. Daniel Carter. Proud of you. Keep your notes. Rest if you can. Tomorrow, 9 o'clock a.m. He typed, see you inside. He didn't write thank you. It was understood the way breath is. He didn't write, I'm scared. He wasn't, not exactly. Fear spikes and fades. This felt wider, older, like standing in a river you've always been walking toward without knowing it. Shadows from the pillars lengthened. The flag snapped in a wind with opinions. Night drew itself over the building in layers. Vans stayed. Mass blinked red for the FAA. Windows turned into a grid of warm squares. Somewhere a judge tried on calm in the mirror, and it didn't fit. On the bench outside 4B, an administrator, Evelyn Moss, finished her shift. She paused. I can't say anything on the record, she said softly, but paper moves in patterns. Today, the pattern changed. Make sure you keep your copies. Thank you, he said, and meant it. Keep that zipped. She nodded at the backpack and was gone. The last bus exhaled at the stop. Factories downriver sighed. A corner store freezer thunked back to life. The city did what cities do, continued. The difference was not in the noise, it was in the note underneath it. Malik stood, slung the backpack, and headed home. He didn't feel triumphant. He didn't feel defeated. He felt ready. On the porch, the light his mother always left on was a circle cut out of the dark. The door opened to dinner's ordinary warmth and the quiet tick of the old wall clock that had kept time through many small wars. He set the backpack on the kitchen table, took out the drive and the bag of screws and the cheap screwdriver that had gotten him this far. Piece by careful piece, he began to put Bluebird back together, not to fix what had been broken that would come, but to remind the device and himself that being taken apart is not the same as being finished. By the last screw, the horizon in the window had gone from black to dark gray to the first thin strip of something softer. He pressed the power button. The little indicator light blinked like a stubborn star. He smiled into the new day. At the courthouse just then, the automatic doors sighed open for the first staffers. A man with a clipboard checked a list and wrote the date. 2 agents in plain suits stood just inside the lobby, talking low. On the desk, a phone started ringing on the 3rd line. "Federal Building, good morning," a voice said, polite, nerves folded in. "How may I direct your call?" "Attorney General Carter's office," the caller said, confirming 9 o'clock. The courthouse breathed different air at 9 a.m., filtered, focused, expectant. A hushed line formed near the private entrance, nobody sure whether to look down at their shoes or up at the man they knew from TV stepping through the glass with the unhurried pace of someone who'd stood in rooms where the lights were always on. Daniel Carter didn't look like a headline. He looked like somebody's dad who happened to wear authority the way other men wear wedding bands. 2 agents flanked him discreetly. He spotted Malik first, of course he did, and put a hand on his shoulder, just a squeeze enough to anchor. "Good morning," Carter said. "You okay?" "I am," Malik said, and then realized it was true, in a way that wasn't about calm, but about being where he needed to be. They moved past the gallery, down a corridor that swallowed footfall sounds. A deputy U.S. Marshal opened a door and ushered them into a conference room designed for meetings no one would ever admit happened. The lights were soft enough not to glare off the maps pinned to the walls. Detroit was there in slices. ER admissions by zip code, code enforcement actions in the last 5 years, dots for air monitor readings in every neighborhood Malik had ever ridden his bike through, and printed in charcoal ink that looked almost angry, a chart of sentencing averages broken down by the same zips. Nora stood with Dr. Elena Morales at a table spread with binders and a laptop pulled open to a dashboard Jalen Brooks had mock-built in an all-nighter. Proof of concept visuals that made numbers breathe. Jalen hovered near the back, hoodie under a borrowed sport coat, hair still damp from a hurried shower. An aide introduced quickly. "Mr. Attorney General, this is Ms. Park, Public Defender, key on chain of custody and filings. Dr. Morales, Committee Liaison and Technical Validation. Mr. Brooks, EPA Junior Engineer. He's been helping transform Mr. Carter's raw readings into a format we can compare with external datasets." Pages flipped. "Also, we've begun pulling judicial data. You're going to want to see this." Carter nodded once. "Let's make the picture whole." Nora took point. Careful cadence, the kind she used on cross when she wanted to lead a witness but looked like she wasn't. Timeline first. Confiscation occurred yesterday morning under Judge Sloan's verbal order. No written receipt, no chain of custody form issued. Attempted disposal was scheduled for this morning at 9, confirmed by internal text Mr. Carter received from a source. Emergency intervention resulted in return of property prior to destruction. "Good," Carter said. "And the why?" Dr. Morales gestured to the first map. Malik's Bluebird nodes recorded particulate concentrations, PM 2.5 and PM 10, across a 6-month window. We aligned spikes to weather patterns, traffic, and industrial schedules. Noise accounted for. Even after controlling for wind direction and temperature inversions, the same neighborhoods light up like a pinball machine. Jalen clicked. The wall screen shifted to a heat map that didn't need words. Red pooled along downriver tracks. Another click. Malik's dots overlaid with hospital data, lines spiked like heart monitors. Now the judicial overlay, Nora said. The next chart built itself in layers, cases, offenses, sentencing lengths. A simple bar, average sentence for a first-time nonviolent offense in a wealthy zip. Next to it, the same offense where the map was red. The second bar stood taller by a margin that made the room go quiet. 40%, the aide said, almost under his breath, as if saying it too loud would change it. On average, defendants from those zip codes received sentences 40% longer than identical cases elsewhere, over the last decade, even starker in the last 5 years. Carter folded his arms, looking at nothing and everything. Phone records? The aide slid a folder across the table. We pulled logs from the court's public directory and subpoenaed 3 months from a telecom. Calls from Judge Sloan's chambers to Senator Alan Keaton's office before rulings on environmental enforcement cases. Patterns suggest coordination, or at minimum, the appearance of it. Yellow highlights. Call, then ruling. Call, then continuance. Call, then dismissal. Dr. Morales looked at Malik as if to say, "You were right about the shape of it." Malik's throat tightened, not with anger or vindication, but with that strange grief that comes from seeing in hard lines what your body already knew. A knock. The door opened. Judge Barrett Sloan entered with counsel, a tall man with a black portfolio and the slick confidence of someone who'd never gotten a parking ticket because he never parked where other people had to. Sloan's robe was on, but it hung different today, as if fabric could register disgrace before the person inside it did. Attorney General Carter, Sloan began, measured. This theatrical display is hardly necessary for what amounts to a misunderstanding about a school project. Carter didn't extend a hand. This isn't about a school project. That incident provided a thread. We pulled it. We found the same cloth we always find. He nodded toward the wall. Please sit. Counsel frowned, but sat. Sloan remained standing a second too long, then sat as if beaten by a chair. Nora walked through the chain of custody failures with the precise boredom of a teacher explaining multiplication tables to a kid who swears letters don't exist. Dr. Morales summarized Bluebird's methodology in plain terms even a judge could understand without feeling talked down to. Jalen's preliminary visuals did what numbers can do when someone gives them a microphone. Then came the charts that never blink. Sentencing disparities, geographic clustering, neat, damning columns of call logs. Sloan's face tightened as if someone cranked an invisible dial behind his ear. This is a political witch hunt, he said at last, voice thin. I've served on this bench for 20 years. Carter's tone didn't change. We reviewed 20 years. Sloan's counsel leaned forward. We're not going to litigate policy in a conference room based on a high schooler's data, Dr. Morales cut in, independently verifiable by any statistician or graduate student with half a weekend. Counsel, Carter said, eyes on Sloan, we're past insults. I'm placing Judge Sloan on administrative leave pending a full investigation. The Judicial Ethics Committee convenes this afternoon. You'll have an opportunity to respond. Counsel read the folder Carter slid across. Formal notice, typed and signed, a letterhead that carried more weight than the robe. Judge Sloan, Carter said, care to explain why defendants from zip codes with the highest pollution burdens receive sentences averaging 40% longer than identical cases elsewhere under your courtroom? Sloan swallowed, looked to counsel. A shrug, the gesture of a man who'd prepared for a different fight. Average disparities don't prove intent, Sloan said. No, Carter replied, but patterns plus proximity plus phone calls, that proves attention. Let's talk about your frequent communications with Senator Keaton's office immediately preceding rulings that benefited development companies tied to him. Color drained from Sloan's face, leaving a chalk outline of his power. We're not prepared to address that, counsel said, jaw tight. You will be, Carter said, standing, meeting over, energy shifting. You're on leave. Do not touch your docket. Do not speak to staff about any case relevant to this investigation. Sloan rose as if pulled, chair legs scraping. I want immunity, he blurted, voice suddenly smaller. Counsel grabbed his elbow. This isn't the place. Carter nodded to the marshal at the door, then back to Sloan, gaze even. Ethics committee at 2. Think about what kind of future you want. Bring counsel. The door shut with a sound that almost felt kind. The room exhaled. Jalen let out a breath that came out like a laugh. He actually said, witch hunt, he whispered. Nora clicked her pen closed with satisfaction and slid notes into her folder like tucking in a child. Carter turned to Malik. You did what you came to do. You told the truth and brought proof. I didn't come to take a judge down, Malik said, honest. I came to get my project back. And you did, Carter said. But when a rot hides under your floorboard, sometimes moving a chair reveals it. Dr. Morales touched the map's edge. We push forward on the science, expansion, verification. Carter nodded. And we push on the law. To Nora, ethics this afternoon. Meanwhile, get a preservation order for the judge's communications. Everything, emails, texts, call logs. File it with someone whose name isn't on his Christmas card list. On it, Nora said, already dialing. The news got out the way news does in a city with antennas for nerves. That night, Malik watched coverage at the kitchen table with his mom, Adrienne, nurse's eyes that had seen longer nights than this and worse. The anchors didn't say much they hadn't been fed, but it was something to hear. Sources confirmed the investigation began after Judge Sloan attempted to confiscate and destroy scientific evidence collected by a high school student. Adrienne looked at Daniel, tie loosened, jacket over a chair like a regular man. How big is this going to get? Very, he said. No gloat, no posture. Keaton's shell companies have been buying property in the very districts where environmental enforcement mysteriously goes soft. You don't need conspiracy when you have incentive. Volume down. A crawl that never stops crawling. Why target my project? Malik asked. Because data doesn't lie, Daniel said, not unkindly. And because you were mapping the one thing nobody wants mapped, where breath gets thin and power gets thick. They ate late, then sat with the TV on mute, captions chasing each other like ants. A call in the hallway, Daniel's voice low, the way people talk when they're telling you something heavy without handing you the weight. Malik's phone buzzed. We've been telling them for years. Shoebox, 7 p.m., Divine Hope Baptist. E. Robinson. I'm going to the church, he told his mom. Be careful, she said. Like a spell. Divine Hope sat on a corner that had seen more rain than funding. Yellow light over the door made everything look gentler. Inside, folding chairs, community dinner prep, a small, fierce woman in a sweater the color of fresh grass waved him over. You Malik? I'm Etta Robinson. You want to see receipts? A shoebox, rubber band, paper, so much paper, edges curled, ink faded but angry. Complaint forms, dust accumulation, chemical odor, nighttime noise, black residue. Dates in careful cursive and rough block letters. 23 years of, we'll look into it, Etta said. Inspectors who never made it when the smell was happening always came when the air was clean. Can I borrow these overnight? Malik asked. We'll scan and bring them back. You can take the whole box if you promise me 2 things, Etta said. First, I get every page back in a folder I can carry without feeling ashamed. Second, you don't let them talk you out of believing what you already know. The air smells like pennies after midnight for a reason. Yes, ma'am, he said. Nora's office, 2 desk lamps, a pizza box halo, 2 flatbed scanners like twin altars, an hour, then 2, feeding the past into a future that could carry it. Run the dates with wind direction, Jalen said, typing. If complaints line up with plant schedules, patterns stop being stories and start being exhibits, Nora finished. The printer spat a simple line chart, humble as a grocery list. Malik felt the kind of joy that isn't happy so much as relieved. What you felt in your lungs now had a shape on paper. Near midnight, home again, Daniel at the table, 2 piles of paper in front of him and a third in his eyes. How's Mrs. Robinson? A general, Malik said, a brief smile. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you present with protection. Ceiling. Ordinary, textured, 3 dark spots shaped like nothing, and yet it felt like a roof he'd never thought he'd get to live under, a place where breath wasn't a negotiation. Ping. An email from Dr. Priya Lawson. Full presentation tomorrow, secure line to mirror your slides. FBI present to ensure no interference. Proud to have you back, Mr. Carter. A quick thank you, phone face down, tiny moon going dark. Morning with sharp coffee and a low sun turning the kitchen window into a square of gold. Adrienne kissed his cheek, tucked a protein bar into his hoodie pocket like he was 6 with a field trip. They drove together because sometimes even strong sons need company that doesn't ask how to help. Room 302 looked the same. Tables, carafes, paper tents with names. It didn't feel the same. 2 agents by the door like wall art that could move. Dr. Lawson greeted him with both hands. Welcome back. He set Bluebird on the table. Ceremony without flourish. The screen lit. A tiny cheer skittered around the room like a friendly bug. My name is Malik Carter. This project is called Bluebird. It was born on a porch where a kid couldn't stop coughing. Correlations and confounders. The line between correlation and causation, and the places where it blurs when a smokestack and an ER are neighbors. Mrs. Robinson's letters, nights when the air tasted like pennies, the school nurse with a drawer of inhalers. The overlay that proved this wasn't just environment or just courts. It was breath and consequence, and who gets both? He didn't know it was done until the room stood on instinct. Dr. Lawson, this data will be essential. Mr. Carter, the committee would like to fund an expansion to cover the entire city. He nodded, face careful. Thank you. In the hallway, Nora caught up, phone to her ear, expression a puzzle settling into a picture. Sloane's attorney reached out, she said. He wants to talk. Already? He's looking for an off-ramp. A beat. Tip from a clerk in Oakland County. 3 more judges with similar patterns are reconsidering their vacation schedules. Malik leaned against the wall and let it wash over him. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like gravity reasserting itself after a funhouse mirror. He could see himself true again, and the building, and Mrs. Robinson's street, and the smokestacks, and the river, and the country, stitched by laws and habits and people with shoeboxes full of proof. A message from Maya Ortiz. Publishing the first piece. Process-focused, no names we can't print. Go on record about methodology, plain language. I'll come to you. Yes, he wrote. But the story's the air, not me. Copy that, she sent. Air gets top billing. Outside, the wind picked up and the flag snapped like a cue. Somewhere below, in a basement that smelled like lemon cleaner and secrets, a table sat empty where a hammer hadn't now dropped. Upstairs, a judge on leave stared at his ceiling, trying to sleep without the hum of power he'd used like a white noise machine for 20 years. Across town, a woman counted her inhalers and breathed a little easier, not because the air had changed yet, but because attention had. Malik slid his hands into his hoodie pocket and felt the protein bar. He peeled it open, took a bite, and laughed quietly at himself for thinking it tasted like celebration. It didn't. It tasted like oats and chocolate and something steady, fuel for walking into an afternoon that would ask him for more than yesterday and somehow would find it in him anyway. No one said chapter 4, they just kept moving and the city moved with them. The story went from a conference room to a corridor to a staircase to a set of cameras sprouting on the courthouse lawn like metal flowers after a hard rain. In the morning light, the Theodore Levin facade looked unchanged. Federal realness with a side of skull, but everything around it felt tuned to a different key. People didn't whisper the way they had yesterday. They spoke in sentences that ended with periods. Maya Ortiz filed her first story at 10:15 a.m. Careful and cold. Process, dates, chain of custody, the hammer that didn't get to drop. No hero shots, no overreach, just receipts. The headline didn't need adjectives. Federal judge placed on leave amid questions over confiscated student research, data points to deepening disparities. On the local morning show, the anchor blinked twice and read it like a weather advisory. By noon, school kids were DMing Malik pictures of inhalers and science notebooks. A respiratory nurse from Detroit Medical messaged Dr. Morales with anonymized ER trends that made Jalen whistle between his teeth. A plant worker sent Maya 3 night shift videos, filming with a hand over the lens as if he could shield the phone from what it was witnessing. They do the blow-offs after midnight, he wrote. We all know when to keep the windows closed. The Environmental Committee promised expansion funding, and meant it. By 2:00 p.m., Dr. Lawson dropped a purchase order template in Malik's inbox and a supplier list to scale Bluebird's guts without losing the honesty of a device born on a kitchen table. She added a line that made Malik grin without showing teeth. We'll keep the name. Bluebird is Detroit enough. He turned off his phone for an hour to breathe without updates, then watched notifications unfurl like a ribbon. Jalen launched a Slack called Civic Sky, a dozen coders already inside, avatars a mix of anime, pets, and union logos. We can clean the permitting data. We can build alerts for odor spikes. My aunt works in the clerk's office. She knows where the bodies are buried. Metaphorically. In the afternoon, Malik walked with Dr. Morales to Divine Hope Baptist, where a pop-up clinic bloomed under a banner that read, Breathe Day. Lysol and casseroles in the air, pediatricians coaching spacer devices and what to do when a child's chest pulls in under the ribs like a curtain, peak flow checks at a folding table. Etta Robinson sat by the door like a mayor, signing folks in with a bic and a look that could make a line behave. Mr. Scientist, she called, come meet people whose breath you're counting. A grandmother described the taste of air when the night turns wrong, pennies and radiator water. A teenage boy didn't run sprints anymore. A young mother traced her block. 2 houses down, oxygen. He used to be a mechanic. Now he builds birdhouses on the porch. The garage smell makes him dizzy. Malik left with addresses for sensor placement and the kind of exhaustion that feels like fuel. Outside, a news crew begged to film inside. Mrs. Robinson's side-eye belonged in a museum. You can film the sign. You want the people, you ask them. Who wants to tell the truth on TV? Half the room raised a hand. She laughed. That's what I thought. Back at the courthouse, the ethics hearing felt like a packed gym on rivalry night. Buzzing, hot, a little mean. Gallery overflowed, press seats full. Hallway a zipper of bodies leaning for a glimpse. A bailiff kept saying order in a voice that sounded nervous, because it was. Sloan entered without his robe, wearing a suit that wanted to be one. He looked smaller without the height boost, like a man standing on ground he hadn't checked for holes. Senator Alan Keaton hovered 35 seconds, 3 cameras, then a side door exit, smile with too many teeth for daytime. The committee chair, a woman with a voice that could cut a loaf and serve you a slice, called it to order. We are reviewing evidence of judicial misconduct by Judge Barrett Sloan, including discriminatory sentencing patterns, improper handling of environmental enforcement cases, and inappropriate communications with parties of interest. We begin with the data. 3 professors, 3 universities, speaking the language bad actors pretend not to understand. Methodology, controls, error bars, nights when wind direction was the only change and the numbers jumped like a spooked herd. A black woman in a blazer the color of confidence ended with, if you measure it, it becomes undeniable. Then Nora's triplicate charts, rulings aligned with property flips, continuances with donation deadlines, dismissal rates that read like a zip code lottery. The document camera made the numbers big enough for the back row to feel sick. Objections piled until the court reporter looked grateful for the rhythm break. A student science project hardly constitutes... The methodology's been independently verified, the chair said, not unkind, but with no place to set down foolishness. Phone calls? Nora slid the log like a dealer. Frequent communications with Senator Keaton's office immediately preceding environmental rulings. Explain. The senator is an old friend, Sloan said. Constituent concerns, development priorities, the city needs growth. Including which environmental cases to dismiss, came the reply, voice steady, volume unnecessary. Counsel sprang up. We'd like to amend testimony. A ripple like wind through corn. Time 400 smiled. Sloan exhaled into the mic. I'm willing to provide full information about Senator Keaton's involvement in exchange for consideration. The chair glanced toward Daniel Carter, not smiling. A small nod, not approval, but gravity. Recess, the chair said. Gavel, sealing wax on a moment. In the hall, reporters formed a funnel. Don't get caught in their net, Nora said, tugging Malik clear. Carter stepped to Mike's and offered 18 seconds. Environmental protections aren't favors, they're promises. When we enforce them selectively, we decide whose children deserve clean air and whose don't. That's unacceptable in America. He stepped away before questions could tangle his ankles. The city applauded in its own dialect. A barbershop turned up the TV. Tut-tuts and cheers in equal measure. A steelworker nodded once like a man who bets on quiet odds. A nurse texted, "Watch the news, something might be happening." By evening, Keaton had resigned for health reasons. Washington, for the rope you were tugging, is tied to your own ankle now. 3 development companies called emergency board meetings nobody believed were about pensions. The EPA opened probes in 12 cities where air maps and court maps shared the same ugly colors. On the east side, kids pedaled to a community center where Jalen ran a workshop, whiteboard, crate of soldering irons, plastic tubs labeled Civic Sky Node, prototype. Solder here, not here, he said. Burn a finger? Swear quietly and keep going. That's science. Can we name them? You build it, you name it. Mine's Sunshine. Mine's Tarzan. The room laughed and... Tarzan and Sunshine, Jalen said, will make a great pair. At the church clinic, Mrs. Robinson toured a news crew past doormats dusted with what you can't see until the camera shows you. We've lived with this our whole lives, she said. Don't you dare tell me we can't measure it. Malik and Adrienne watched from their couch. Daniel entered mid-segment, loosened tie, attention for a face. You never wanted any of this, Adrienne said. No, Malik said, and it didn't feel like retreat. I wanted cleaner air. The rest followed the truth. What happens next? More of this, Daniel said. More hearings, more data, more shoeboxes. Vows, not gloats. Bluebird on the coffee table, between keys and mail, like it belonged. Phone buzz, Maya. Part 2 at 8, enforcement patterns, no names we can't publish. Quote you on air is a right? Yes, he typed. The story is the air, not me. Across town, a mom read Maya's piece while her daughter did math. That's the boy from the news. That's the one. She didn't know why she felt safer, but she did. In an office park north, an informal meeting sharpened. If Sloan talks, he is talking. Keaton's out. We only worked with his people, someone lied. On a red-lined porch, a granddad with an unlit cigarette told a river story, how it smelled worse once, got better once, because people complained the right way at the right time. His granddaughter listened with empty hands, the fragile kind of change you don't write down. Night settled lighter, like a window left open. Malik made a list titled Next 10, Mirror the Drive Twice, Pull Additional Health Data, Meet Jalen about enclosures, Email a placement map to Dr. Lawson, Coffee, with Maya and Nora to align timelines. He added the line his dad would love, document everything. Then a sentence he didn't plan, exhale at the end of a run. We're not chasing villains, we're building air that doesn't care who you are. Buzz, Nora. Sloan's lawyer wants DOJ first thing. Word is proffer. He's more scared of Keaton than of us. Good, he'll talk faster. Malik sent a thumbs up and a blue bird emoji that coaxed a laughing face Nora would never admit to using in public. At 11, EPA's regional office emailed Daniel, expansion of community monitoring initiative, 12 cities. CC list read like a road atlas. Gary, Newark, Baton Rouge, Fresno, Philly. Daniel forwarded to Dr. Morales. Ready? Been ready since I was 9 and my mother put towels under the door, she replied. Midnight neared. The house settled. Adrienne clicked off the lamp, leaving the TV's blue spill to paint the couch. Daniel paused in Malik's doorway, watching his son sleep the way you watch a tide. Trusting it, still watching. He thought of breath and law, how both foul when power forgets what they're for. From Malik's open window, tires on wet asphalt, a far siren, a dog debating a raccoon. Daniel could have sworn the air shifted half a note. Maybe imagination. Maybe a boy's project making a city pay attention to lungs it had footnoted. In the kitchen, Bluebird's status light blinked. Slow, steady heartbeat. Daniel set his hand near it. Not touching, just close. The light kept time. He kept time with it. Before bed, Adrienne checked the locks, then the window, the quick scan for nothing and everything. The street looked the same. A flag wrapped and unwrapped itself on a pole. Somewhere, a judge who misread the public's patients discovered insomnia's worst trick. It makes you listen to yourself. On the couch, Malik stood, because his body had learned that waking and standing are cousins, and cracked the curtain. The courthouse didn't look different at night, but he could feel the day it had had and the day it was about to have, and the way a building can be a person when it wants to be, saying through vents and lights and doors. Okay, we're listening. The late-night anchor read a headline in snow day tone. Senator Alan Keaton resigns. EPA opens investigations in 12 cities. We'll have more in the morning. Adrienne turned off the set. The room went properly dark. Malik let the curtain fall and whispered, "Not a prayer, not a plan. Let the air be fair." Somewhere, a refinery night crew postponed a blow-off because there were sensors now. Somewhere else, a man who orders by phone counted days and called his lawyer again. In a house where the clock ticked like calm, a boy whose project had been called suspicious closed his eyes and breathed the quiet confidence of a city learning, finally, to be fair with its air. Never wanted any of this, he had said. I wanted cleaner air. He meant it, and it was beginning. He didn't feel different in D.C., not really. The city had more marble and more birds that acted like they paid rent, but breath was still breath. The conference center buzzed like a hive. You could taste coffee and ambition in the air the way you can taste rain when it's a mile out. Badges swung on lanyards. Names he'd only seen in footnotes walked by with paper cups, talking about budgets like they were weather. They fitted a mic to his collar with the gentleness reserved for fragile art and fragile kids. He touched it once, then kept his hands to himself, like he'd practiced. The stage lights warmed his cheeks. Beyond them, the room blurred into a dark lake with islands of faces. He cleared his throat and didn't wait for nerves to catch him. "My name is Malik Carter," he said, and 1,000 conversations stopped being other things and became his. "This project is called Bluebird. It started on a porch where a kid couldn't stop coughing." He didn't perform, he told. The maps rose behind him, before and after heat, red cooling to orange, and in some blocks to an amber that looked like mercy. He explained the nodes, the cadence of sampling, the accounting for wind. "Correlation isn't causation," he said. "True. Sometimes correlation is the only honest road to get to causation," he added. "Also true." He used plain language, not because the room was simple, but because complexity makes cowards of people who don't like being pinned to a yes or a no. "Environmental justice isn't abstract," he said. "It's breath. It's water. It's the dirt under your kids' fingernails. We measured particulate matter, then we measured what happens to people when those numbers get big. And we asked a question the city has to answer. Why does enforcement show up where the money lives and ghost where the inhalers are?" He finished without crescendo, just the quiet finish line of a long mile. Applause rose, not worship, not ovation, relief. The room had been waiting to exhale on a fact it already knew, but needed permission to name. On the panel, EPA Director Harrison leaned into the mic. "We launched similar community monitoring pilots in 30 cities. We're not chasing anomalies, we're documenting patterns. Stories can be dismissed. Networks cannot." Chair Lopez from the Judicial Ethics Committee: "New requirements, environmental rulings must include explicit reasoning. We've introduced statistical review for bias. If your sentencing patterns sing the same song by zip code, we will hear it." It was a heady table for a kid from Cass Tech, but Malik didn't sink. When asked about intent, "I'm not in anyone's heart," he said. "I'm in the air and the outcomes." When someone said hero, his mouth tightened. "Heroes don't mirror hard drives," he said softly. "Nerds do. I'm a nerd with neighbors." He stepped into bright DC day with Daniel beside him, the National Mall stretching long enough to make you believe time could be honest if it tried. They walked without talking, letting the conference noise shake off like rain. "Settlement requires Keaton's companies to fund clinic expansions and remediation," Daniel said, as if reading the weather. 3 neighborhoods to start, 2 more by year's end. "Will it last?" Malik asked. No sarcasm, just careful hope, learning its balance. "That depends on people like you," Daniel said. "Systems don't change because they're asked nicely. They change because the evidence makes refusal unbearable." Phone buzz in the hoodie pocket. Subject line buttoned up enough to make him smile. Full scholarship offer. Environmental science and pre-law track. Formal. Kind. Phrases like statewide expansion and student research fellow. The words blurred, then snapped back into letters he could carry. On a bench ahead, a little boy pointed at the Washington Monument. "Big pencil." His father laughed. Malik laughed too, not because he needed joy, but because joy came uninvited and he wasn't rude. Afternoon notifications lined up like dominoes. 3 more judges on administrative leave in other states. An anonymous, scrubbed email leak. Selective cleanup schedules timed before real estate pushes. Bland subject lines with sinister edges. Operational alignment, Q2 visibility. Inside, move this to West Quadrant Friday night. Ensure inspectors visit when readings are favorable. Emojis that acted like nothing mattered. Maya texted one line. "Told you, we weren't crazy, they were casual." Back in Detroit, the rollout wasn't a press conference. It was Saturday at a community maker space. Once a warehouse, once a bakery. Kids, aunties, union jackets, women in scrubs hovering over plastic tubs labeled Civic Sky. Jalen went from Slack channel to supply run like a man burying grief with a to-do list. Local shop cut acrylic with a laser and a conscience. Tough, weather-tight casings, and because this was Detroit, kind of gorgeous. He and Dr. Morales conducted the room. Solder here, not here. Zip tie tight enough to hold, loose enough not to strangle. If you smell burnt plastic, too much. If you smell victory, 2 wires just met. By dusk, 40 nodes. Each named in Sharpie to outlast weather, Sunshine and Tarzan, Midnight and Harriet, Aunt Evie and the People's Breath, mounted on porches, school eaves, church steeples, a bodega, sign a library gutter, an 8-year-old on a stepladder, dad gripping the back, handing her a present the city had withheld too long. Test button pressed, indicator blink, the cheer that rose felt like a block party and a vote. By Sunday, Civic Sky data hit the public dashboard. Jalen didn't sleep, wrote code until the lines danced. Interface clean, no gradients, no cute, a map, a timeline. Click a dot, see a graph. Click a day, see spikes. Click spikes, see notes. Smelled like pennies. Like a tire fire. Like the back of a battery. Nora and Maya launched Clean Air Hour. No yelling, no stunts, no naked fear. This spike, Nora said, that's a night our friend Etta logged 3 calls and heard 3 times, "We're on it." Now we can timestamp "we're on it." Maya added context. Week after week, same frame. That's a pattern. Patterns aren't anecdotes, they're evidence. City Council tried the right noises. The first hearing veered toward task force and we'll study this. The room full of aunties, teenagers, nurses, and one very angry school janitor did not let them hide. An older councilwoman banged the gavel. We are not going to play ping pong with asthma. They passed a transparency ordinance in committee. Enforcement visits logged publicly within 24 hours. Blow-offs reported in real time. Worker tips protected by ordinance. It would get watered in negotiation, like everything does. But it would exist. The work wasn't an arc, it was a grid. Fix one square, another flickered. The app crashed under load. The city misspelled 3 streets. Dots landed in a lake. Tarzan reported a steady 999, a popped wire. Sunshine went offline. Someone unplugged the router for a crock pot. A pigeon wore Joseph's sensor like a hat. Progress, they learned, is a shared doc with a million comments. No one agrees on font. Everyone agrees on the goal. Sloan did what scared men do when ladders are removed. He found a room and tried to negotiate the floor. His attorney asked for a proffer. Informal, off the record, give us what you've got. Daniel listened without hurry, the one thing that unnerves powerful men when they finally need mercy. Names unspooled like a knotted rope, then smoother. Staffers who left no voicemails. Shell LLCs with cheerful names. Green Dawn Holdings. A VP who dodged email but lived on lobby calendars. A fixer called Uncle Ray, who wasn't anyone's uncle, and wrote nothing down. Why? Daniel asked. Not judge, not pastor. A man in a kitchen who still wants the truth. Sloan looked at hands he'd kept clean for decades. It started as growth, jobs, tax base. The city needed wins. Then I liked the phone calls. I liked being the guy who could make wheels turn. Efficient, I told myself. I stopped asking who breathed what, when I balanced. Ethics committee at 2, Daniel said. Bring your memory. Leave your pride. Clean Air Hour doubled, then doubled again. A social worker's voice shook. I lost a client. Her apartment was permanently asthma for her child. A high schooler named Reggie held up a mini node, $15, dust sensor from a defunct robot. Not saying skip Bluebird, I'm saying we can all play. Bet, he said. Nora translated bet for the boomers with a grin that made her look 20. The scholarship letterhead and watermark made Adrian hold the page to the light like old money. The guidance counselor sent 20 exclamation points and an "I told you so." If we report a blow-off, how do we not get fired? A hard-hat veteran asked. Jalen answered in slides. Anonymous hashing, no names, just times, locations. The patterns talk. Maya ran part 2, then part 3. Not corruption ring. Pattern of selective enforcement with political proximity. Words like apparent, according to documents, because verbs can blow a true story if you get sloppy. Her inbox filled with thanks and threats. She forwarded the threats, starred the thanks, and texted Malik only the good stuff. 6th graders building sensors. Mrs. Robinson holding a laminated complaint with the city's stamp like a late arriving blessing. Some days felt like montage. 1:03 a.m., enforcement at a plant that loved midnight sighs. The manager in a coat. We were about to do maintenance. 2 red camera lights blinked. Maintenance did not happen. Some days felt like mud, a stolen sensor listed on Marketplace as cool clock. A councilman tried to smother the ordinance at 9 a.m. across town. 50 aunties arrived at 8:30 with thermoses like weapons and took the seats like a choir. On an ordinary Tuesday, Malik stood in the back of a church support group. A father with tattooed forearms. I felt crazy for years. It's not just us. A mother, tearless but wrecked. I learned the word trigger, like this city is a hand, and my child's chest is the thing it squeezes. The room hummed, the sound humans make when someone names a hidden thing. Home that night, ceiling fan blades a question. Text to Daniel, are we winning? Reply, we're moving. Winning implies a finish line. I haven't found one worth stopping at. The national story grew like ivy. A senator who'd never noticed air asked for a briefing. Daniel agreed and insisted on Dr. Morales and a local nurse. Glass tables break if all the weight is law. An op-ed, we chose which lungs to save. Malik didn't read it. Opinion pieces made him itch. Adrienne clipped it anyway. Fridge for a week. Sometimes you need your fight translated into another font. The hardest moment came quiet. Sloan, pale, suddenly older, entered a small room to sign. You understand the terms, Daniel said. Cooperation late still matters, but less. Sloan looked at Malik for the first time since the hammer that never fell. I never thought a kid would be the one to... He stopped. I'm not the one, Malik said, level. We all are. Sloan signed, ink scratching like a small animal escaping. In the corridor, Malik leaned on cool wall. Nora stood beside him, saying nothing, her best argument. Do you get used to this? He asked. Bad guys as people. People you love, tired, wins not everything, losses in plain clothes. No, Nora said, but it gets familiar. Like a tool. Heavy. Helpful. You build muscle. Next clean air hour. This week, childhood asthma ER visits in 2 hotspots dropped 7% year over year, Maya said. Not a miracle. A line bending. Keep showing up. Reggie held his mini node, hands shaking, then steady. I'm not saving the world, he said, but my grandma's porch is 18 feet from a bus stop. I want to know what her lungs are seeing while she's snapping green beans. Malik typed, Reggie, you are absolutely saving a world. That's how it works. A gray Thursday tried to rain, then changed its mind. The city posted an enforcement dashboard so clear and auditable that Jalen cried in a broom closet. Do not tell anyone I have feelings, he texted. Too late. I sold your feelings to a data broker, Malik replied. That afternoon, a plant that loved the rules less than smoke announced a temporary shutdown for upgrades. PR smiled. We're always listening. Neighbors took deeper breaths they hadn't risked in a while. The block seemed to say, huh, week's end, tired feet, hot takeout, the quiet surprise of a life not imploded by attention. Adrienne poured seltzer into wine glasses because it felt like a night for bubbles. To breath, she said. To breath, Daniel echoed. To breath, Malik said, a promise he could keep even when suits and checkbooks decided not to. Later, on the porch, he watched the street. A Civic Sky dot blinked from the school 2 blocks over. A teen bunny-hopped a pothole and whooped like a canyon cleared. Across the way, Mrs. Robinson arranged chrysanthemums in a plastic planter, facing them toward the street like an offering. Phone buzz, one last time. Screenshot from Maya. Breaking. Federal investigators probe Shell LLCs tied to ex-Senator Keaton. Multiple states coordinate. He typed, get some sleep. She sent a cat sprawled across a keyboard. Copy desk. He laughed into the dark, tired and lucky at the same time. Inside, Daniel checked locks, counted blessings and exits, the dad way. Tap on Malik's door. Hey. Yeah? Proud of you, Daniel said. He'd said it before. It never weighed less. Proud of you, Malik said back. He'd meant it before. Tonight it tasted like clean air. When the house finally exhaled, when the city wound down to late-night frequency, when app graphs slid into midnight plateaus and sensors' tiny hearts kept time with the people they watched over, the story didn't wrap with a bow. It didn't have to. It lay down next to tomorrow like a comfortable truth and waited, steady, for the next breath. No one put a ribbon on the end of the story. It just kept walking until one day Malik realized the city sounded different. Not quiet, Detroit never did quiet, but tuned. Sirens still stitched the night, buses still sighed, bass still thumped 2 blocks over. Yet between those notes there was a new space, like someone had cracked a window in a stale room and the air remembered how to be air. He felt it first on a morning that looked like every other, sneakers by the door, the soft clack of his mom's bracelets, his dad humming the news theme under his breath as he poured coffee. He stepped outside and the cold didn't claw quite as hard. The horizon over the river had a cleaner blue. That kind of change never shows up on a banner. It shows up in breath. He walked downtown, past blocks where the trees used to be stunted and dirty and were now, give the city a minute, leafing like they meant it. At the steps of the Theodore Levin courthouse, where his story had once been stripped down to screws and suspicion, a new plaque plated the wall, Environmental Justice Review Board, Estan year 1 after. The font refused flourish. The metal letters were simple, honest, stubborn. He touched the cool edge of the plaque and stepped inside. Security knew him, not like celebrity, more like postman. The guard's nod contained a full sentence. We got off on the wrong foot. We learned. Malik nodded back. A grammar they shared now. In the main hall, where portraits of law used to stare down like they invented breath, a community exhibition ran along temporary walls, photos of porches with Civic Sky nodes, kids in bright hoodies soldering, a wash of maps, before and after, reds, ambers, a hopeful green. At the center, under museum glass, sat Bluebird, restored, still a little scuffed, its tiny heartlight blinking like it was proud to be alive. Looks good in a suit, a voice said behind him. Dr. Morales. He grinned. She wore a blazer that said funding proposal murderer and sneakers that said I still climb ladders. They cleaned the board, he said, leaning to the glass like visiting a relative. Didn't erase the scratches, you see that? They left the story. She nodded, eyes bright. Touring exhibition opens in Chicago next month. Cass Tech is already planning a field trip, even if you pretend to be too cool to go. I'll go, he said. I might hide behind a plant, but I'll go. They stepped into a conference room at the time printed on the calendar, Review Board Weekly. Community leaders, city folks who didn't hate their jobs, 2 from the health department. Nora slid in with a folder. Maya set a small recorder on the table. Memory likes a partner. Jalen opened a laptop and pulled up a dashboard too beautiful for government, smuggled into government anyway. "Let's start with the numbers," said the health department rep, badge worn like a truce flag. Childhood asthma hospitalizations down 32% in the affected tracts. Adult ER visits trending down 19%. Causation is a tangle, but the line is bending in the right direction. No one clapped. Nobody needed to. Shoulders lowered. A soft exhale moved the room. Not relief, a gear shifting to carry more. "We're not declaring victory," Nora said, intercepting any hands reaching for a cake knife. "We're declaring evidence." "Civic Sky coverage?" Dr. Morales asked. 83% online, Jalen said, fingers flying. "We lost 6 nodes to pigeons, 3 to storms, 1 to a basketball. Sunshine survived a raccoon. Tarzan is on his 3rd enclosure. Godspeed, Tarzan. Alerts after midnight down 40% in the worst corridors. Either plants changed behavior or they got better at lying, but lying makes noise, and we listen." Maya pushed her glasses up with a knuckle. "We'll publish the quarterly map with context and receipts. No victory laps, just a trail." Malik looked at a black and white of an old jury that looked like the city used to pretend it was. He heard how different this room sounded from the day a judge had said, "Because I can." Now the room said, "Because we will." After the meeting, he wandered to a small office, once a supply closet. A new sign read, "Community Hours, Intake." Inside, a man in a county polo sorted paper into boxes labeled by neighborhood, shoulders hunched in the universal curve of people who used to hold a gavel. Sloan didn't look up right away. When he did, his face had lost 2 decades of smug and gained 5 years of tired. "Mr. Carter," he said, not standing. His voice didn't echo. It had stopped trying to be bigger than his chest could hold. "Judge Sloan," Malik said, then corrected because accuracy is the only mercy some days. "Mr. Sloan." A jaw muscle jumped and settled. "Part of my plea agreement," he said, stacking Jefferson then Verner. "Data intake and sorting for neighborhoods my rulings harmed. Community service at the clinic on Saturdays. They asked my preferences. I said, I trust the court's discretion." Malik nodded. He wasn't here for triumph. He let the fact happen. Sloan cleared his throat. "I used to think one person couldn't change a system," he said, the air sitting down around the words. "Especially not a kid." "It wasn't just me," Malik answered. "It was Mrs. Robinson. Nora, Jalen, Dr. Morales when she was 9 and her mom put towels under the door." He could have named the world. Instead, he let the list ring as enough. Sloan didn't reach for redemption. He reached for another stack. "Good day, Mr. Carter." "You too," Malik said, leaving a room where the past was working and the future was waiting. Outside, he walked blocks that used to smell like pennies and radiator water. An illegal dump, now a park with a splash pad hissing laughter in summer, a cardboard sled hill in winter. Benches with plaques, names people bothered to remember. New trees, teen thin and brave. A Civic Sky node blinked beneath a weather hood, its little LED steady as a lighthouse for the block. At the school, Castech had always been dreams and chipped paint. Now a banner rolled over the entrance. Castech Environmental Justice Academy, endowed by settlement funds and 100 bake sales that made the money honest. In a former closet, a lab. Rows of monitors, 2 laser cutters, a sign above the door, "This place makes air you can't see, law you can." "Mr. Carter!" A chorus popped. He still turned on surprise. "Mentor Day," a teacher called. "Up for solder burns and existential hope?" "Always," he said, and meant it. They circled a half-assembled node like a tiny spaceship. "Do we really need flux?" a kid asked. "It smells like sadness." "Yes," Malik said, Sadness is the price of conductivity. Reggie's friend held wire. Where do I cut so it doesn't break when it rains? Give it slack, he said, guiding her hand. Everything breaks when it's pulled too tight. They worked an hour, then another. Test lights winked alive. The class cheered without irony. He bottled that sound for hard days. In the hall, a glass case held a model block, blue dots marking sensors. Placard, our air, our data. Next to it, an EPA letter from another time zone thanking the academy for sharing its curriculum. The kids were exporting breath. On a bulletin board, coding club, choir auditions, a memorial for a kid from 3 grades back whose asthma attack went sideways when an ambulance got stuck behind a train. Someone pinned a Civic Sky graph beside it, a spike, then a drop. Handwritten. For him, we measure. He met Daniel at the park's corner, worksuit, tie loosened, top button undone. The posture of someone who spent a year telling truth in rooms that hate it and didn't let the rooms win. They walked. No big talk at first. A kid zipped by on a scooter. Hey, Mr. Carter and Mr. Carter? Daniel's laugh came low and surprised. How's the board? Daniel asked. Less theater, more spreadsheets, Malik said. Which is the point? Keaton's sentencing is tomorrow, Daniel said, matter of fact, like weather. Restitution fund is set. 20 years of remediation and community health. It won't fix the past. It will make the future less cruel. Will they keep trying? Malik asked. People like him? Yes, Daniel said. Power doesn't retire, it reloads. He paused. But so do we. Mrs. Robinson's porch, house dress, cardigan, shoebox at her feet, not because she needed it, but because to put it away would be to pretend. If it isn't my 2 Carters, she said, you come to check on the old lady like I can't climb a ladder and scold a pigeon. You shouldn't be climbing ladders, Daniel said, automatic, paternal. She laughed, waved the hand that raised generations with ladders and waves. Childhood asthma down 32%, she said, number rolling like a verse. They say. I say I hear it at night. Less coughing. More sleeping. I crack the window now. Haven't done that since... Shoot, Reagan. You keeping your receipts? Malik asked. Habit. Always, she said, tapping the shoebox. And you keep yours. Don't think because the line is down we don't need to keep coloring it. They walked to the courthouse, not because they had to, but because sometimes you pass your origin story to remind the present how it happened. Inside, Maya leaned on a column, thumbs flying. National rollout is official, she called. EPA adopts the Civic Sky framework as baseline, 30 cities and counting. They named it Community Air Standardization. Only a committee could love it, but the data doesn't care. Also, U.S. courts' transparency rules. Environmental rulings must include reasoning and auto-flag for bias patterns. Chair Lopez gave me a quote I didn't have to rewrite. Look at you, Nora said, appearing like punctuation, using your sources and your verbs. I'm domesticated now, Maya deadpanned. I eat context for breakfast. The review board reconvened, shorter, crisp. A community health worker outlined home filter grants. A pastor offered his church as a cooling center for hotter heat waves. A teenage coder demoed an API for asthma diaries. The board voted down a 3-minute cap on public comment. Some stories need 5. Malik and Daniel took the long way home through blocks stitched with new saplings. Shared silence, the kind family earns. A kid waved them across with the tiny solemnity of a crossing guard. A Civic Sky node blinked 3 short, then steady, heartbeats synced to the cities. You know what he told me once, Daniel said softly. And Malik knew who without asking. Sloan, during community hours, he never thought one person could change a system. Especially not a kid, Malik finished, the worn line turning folklore. Daniel smiled, then shook his head at the sky like arguing with a cloud. He was wrong about a few things, he said. Their block at the soft hour, neighbors out because the day had been survived together. Someone grilled. Marvin Gaye on a Bluetooth that sounded better than money could explain. The app pinged. New node online. Harriet, second. He didn't check. Sometimes faith looks like letting the group chat do its job. They sat on the steps. Adrienne brought 2 glasses of cold something that wasn't wine and tasted like it was. They looked at the street like it was theirs, not by deed, by attendance. A BMX kid bunny hopped the same pothole, but this time he wasn't dodging oil sheen, just a shadow. You did good, Adrienne said to both, refusing the lie that men are solo ships. You're not done, not ever, but you did good. We did good, Malik said, resting his head on his mother's shoulder a second longer than he would in public, because home makes time soft. Dusk pulled down. A breeze did that new thing, made leaves talk where before they were too choked to try. Malik closed his eyes and listened, letting tears gather, unbeautiful and proud. He remembered Edda's shoebox, the hammer that never fell, the room rebalanced by a phone number. He remembered being told, smooth as law, thin as power, you're just another black boy with no future. He remembered his hands not shaking. May I call my father, Your Honor? He remembered the quiet before a rule changed, and the sound a city makes when it starts measuring what it used to ignore. Down the block, a young couple mounted a Civic Sky node. She tightened screws with the focus of infants and good soup. He checked the app. We're live. Their cheer wasn't loud enough to draw neighbors. The neighbors heard it anyway, because joy transmits. Breath is the first right, Malik said, to no one and everyone. Law is the ladder that lets you reach it, Daniel added. Then, after a beat, you can't pull the ladder if it's the air. Malik smiled into the dusk. Somewhere, Bluebird's glass case chimed. Visiting hours over, its little heart light kept beating anyway. Across the street, Mrs. Robinson rose, brushed her cardigan like a queen. She looked at the sky like an old friend finally apologized, and meant it. About time, she said, to the breeze, to the city, to the future. Next week? Malik asked. Nationwide initiative launch, Daniel said, Justice Department silhouette in his mind. Community-driven data, transparent enforcement tracking, standard reporting, the kind of boring that saves lives. Good, Malik said. We need more boring heroes. Streetlights flickered on, making every face a little gentler. He thought of everywhere the line had walked since a gavel cracked and a sentence tried to leash him. Rooms and rules, a porch, a lab, a board meeting nobody predicted. It had cost. It had paid. It was what real change is. Unglamorous, relentless, shared. Tomorrow would bring headlines and countermoves, hearings and hedges, someone with money rehearsing a fresh lie with better graphics. Tomorrow would bring a node offline, a neighbor calling, a kid asking if flux always smells that bad. Tomorrow would bring the work. Tonight brought this, a block exhaling, a city listening, a boy, not a boy anymore, sitting with his parents on steps facing a street that faced a courthouse that had been taught, however briefly, to tell the truth. They told him to know his place. He decided his place was wherever the truth needed standing. And he stood, on courthouse steps, on porches, in rooms with microphones and without, until the air answered back, clear enough to breathe, honest enough to measure, and shared enough to call ours. That's how it happened. How one kid with a science project turned a courtroom insult into a national reckoning. Malik didn't set out to make history. He just refused to stay silent when the air he breathed and the justice he believed in were both being poisoned. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to share it. Not for the views, for the voices that still go unheard. Leave a comment. Tell us what justice means where you live. Because change doesn't start in courtrooms. It starts when someone like you decides the truth is worth standing for. Thank you for watching. Stay brave, stay loud, and never forget, one voice, steady enough, can shake the whole system.